Okay, the last major form we're going to go over is the contract to purchase real estate. This is also known as an offer. This is the form you're going to fill out with your buyer when they are ready to submit an offer on a property. So let's click on the contract to purchase. Again, this is an auto-filled contract, so all the text fields are already present. We're going to walk through this briefly, but again, it's incredibly important to follow. If we go back to follow this training guide that Chris and I developed, this will go field by field and highlight exactly what you need to fill in. We're going to talk a little bit at a higher level, but we're also here to help you if you need to talk about negotiation tactics or strength of an offer. We can hit on those things in specific situations. So initially, you're going to start out with filling out your buyer's information, so their name and current address. You don't need to worry about putting anything in the owner of record section because it's listed as owner of record. You're going to want to fill out the complete property address and reference the MLS number where you found it. It was introduced by Full Circle Realty LLC. Since you're a representative of our brokerage, this will be pre-filled in. Section 1, you're going to put the overall purchase price, and then you're going to put your 2 deposit amounts. So the first is your initial deposit. That's generally going to be right around $1,000, but it can vary. And it should be checked with to be delivered forthwith upon receipt of written acceptance. That way you're not turning over a deposit with your actual offer. You're waiting for the offer to be accepted by the seller before you're giving your clients money to be put in escrow. For the second deposit, that's going to be submitted with the signatures of the purchase and sale agreement. We'll specify when that's going to be a little later in this contract. Again, that's generally a much higher amount than the initial deposit, but there's no set number for what it has to be. Generally, for sellers, a larger deposit means it's a stronger offer because they're holding more funds in escrow. So unless you meet the terms of a contract contingency, you won't be able to recoup that money. That will be kept by the seller. For duration of offer, this is where you're going to specify how long the offer is good for. Depending on your situation, you generally want to make this pretty short. You don't want to be giving 48, 72 hours to the listing agent to kind of shop your offer around and look for better offers. If you're submitting it early in the morning, generally you can keep it good through that evening or through the next morning, but you don't really want to go beyond the 24-hour time frame unless it's really a non-competitive situation. You know that the seller is going to need some time to decide. For purchase and sale agreement, again, you're going to fill out the time and date of when that's going to be signed by. Again, no set time frame, but in the industry, you'll generally see between 14 and 28 days. Coordinate with the closing attorney and the listing agent to find out what is an appropriate time frame. The sooner it is generally means the stronger the offer, just because that secondary contract really solidifies the deal and it gets that second deposit in place for the seller. So they do like to have an earlier purchase and sale date because that makes it a little bit of a more firm commitment. Next, you're going to list the closing time and then the registry of deeds within the county that you're going to. So generally you'll see Suffolk or Middlesex County, but depending on where your property is, just find the correct county, fill that in. Escrow is going to generally be held by the listing broker, so make sure you put the listing brokerage in here, not the listing agent. Again, it has to be someone who can hold escrow, which is only at the broker level, that is, or an attorney, but it is not, agents are not allowed to hold escrow. Next, you're going to get into contingencies, section 6. So this is going to be your mortgage contingency. So you're going to be, if it's not a cash offer and you're seeking a mortgage, you're going to be asking for financing. Generally, you can put a dollar amount in here, so you can calculate if they want 10% down and they're doing a $500,000 offer, then they're going to need financing in the amount of $450,000. So you'd put that in here like that, or you can specify 10% of the purchase price, so you don't actually have to get into calculating what the exact mortgage amount is going to be. This is a little bit of an easier way to do it. That way you don't screw up on calculating on the math side. This next date is going to be when their mortgage contingency is due by. This is going to be after the signing of the P&S. Generally, it's pretty close to closing, but you need to coordinate with the mortgage lender to find out when they'd be able to get their mortgage commitment in place. And that way it fulfills the terms of the contract. And at that point, your buyer won't have to execute their mortgage contingency to get out of the contract. The reason they have this contingency is if the buyer is unable to obtain financing, it allows them on a certain date to be able to remove themselves from the contract and receive their escrow deposits back. Again, coordinate with the lender, the mortgage representative, to find out when a reasonable date for receiving the mortgage contingency would be. The second date in the contingency is when the buyer needs to submit a mortgage application by. Generally, this can be done pretty soon after an executed offer. So we're, 3, 5, 7 days is pretty reasonable. You just need to make sure your client actually submits the application so they meet the terms of the contingency and they're not in default. Section B under contingencies is your inspection contingency. Generally, you're going to see 7 to 10 days given for the inspection contingency. If for some reason there's no date and they want to waive that, you can X out this section completely. Same goes with the mortgage contingency. But if they do have a date, again, you're going to click on here and we'll have a calendar that pops up. You just put the last day that they're allowed to have their mortgage or their inspection their inspection conducted on. And then lastly, this is just reps and acknowledgement. So read through this so you know what it says, but it is basically saying that you as the buyer's agent has done a few things, that you've submitted certain documentation to your client, that you've represented them in a certain way. So if there's no additional representations, you would put none in that block, just as it says on the last line. If none, write none. And then section 9 is going to be for additional terms. So this is going to be if your client wants anything else included, say they want to ask for a credit right off the bat, if they see something that's broken, they want to fix, if they want to include the washer and dryer in the sale, this is where you're going to specify the additional terms. So you're just going to number them, write what the additional term is, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. If you need a continuation page, your last one should say see continuation page. Terrible spelling. And then you can go and now that you've referenced that continuation page, you can attach that to your offer. Have your buyer sign the continuation page as well. At the end, have your buyer sign, and then the seller will have an opportunity to accept, reject, or counteroffer what your buyer is submitting.